Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we finally have the self-titled album from Foxing. Even before I heard this album, I knew that Foxing was in a weird place. Near My God was such a climactic and powerful album, easily one of the best of 2018, which seemed to prep the band for grander pastures. And yet, Draw Down the Moon didn't really offer the payoff it should have. Yes, it was a more compact and simplified version of some themes and ideas they previously explored, and yeah, it was more commercially accessible in the melodic tones, which got them a little bit more attention, but probably not the type they wanted. Yes, I consider it a slight step down, but Foxing could still write terrific hooks. They could do well in that space, and some of the backlash had the vibe of criticizing the project for what it wasn't, and what they wanted rather than what the band actually delivered. I still think it is one of the best albums of 2021, but the band certainly took the rough experience to heart, with the buzz around this new self-titled, self-produced album highlighting an extremely difficult recording process and a lot of introspection on revisiting the painful emotions of their catalog during their anniversary tour. But hey, the band's still together, somehow, and they've got that self-titled album, and you know, in the tradition of mid-period self-titled albums, it's a scathing and often difficult to hear exploration of the band in flux, if not in crisis. They're getting older, and while they're a relatively successful independent emo band, they certainly haven't made millions, often working other jobs just to sustain the hard life to go through such a difficult and emotionally devastating process in making and performing this art. Now, a lot of folks have struck the comparison to Near My God in terms of the thematic arc and the sound, and it's mostly a fair one. Both charge through the excruciating downward spiral, but somehow find a shred of hope on the other side, albeit in a difficult to swallow shape. But this project feels more direct and a lot more personal. The existential ennui feels tactile, the encroaching nihilism of Hell 99. It's a searing scream of what it all could be worth in the end. Greyhound makes its crushing length a focal point in order to accentuate the drudgery of tour, attempting to buy into this rockstar fantasy that is fading in real time. Barking is bitterly sarcastic and wishing for a miracle, and yet for what? To pay off one's self-delusion that it all might work out, leading to the album's shrieking midpoint in Kentucky McDonald's, where the breakdown feels all the more pathetic outside of that titular establishment. I'm mediocre, and there's nothing worse. And thus the album's thesis point becomes less, it's all gonna be okay or even good in the end, and more, you know, you can make it work as it is, maybe find a way to be happy. It's kind of tricking your mind into some form of acceptance, getting out of your own head, where every bit of writer's block and detuned instrument leads the clarity just to keep on living. There is that desperate craving for the rapturous experience of performance art that you find outside yourself, but instead maybe the longer lasting joys, the little things, the little joys in accepting good enough to keep moving forward, echoed by old recordings that they made as children where the song never quite came out the way they wanted, but they got it. It's a song nonetheless. And thus, many of the artistic choices will make sense in that context. The production is smothering, oppressive, bricked out. Connor Murphy is screaming to the point where his unique trilling shriek is pressed to the brink and openly cracking. Many of the tones feel outright alien, increasingly warped, taking in all that experimentation from Near My God into even more visceral territory, to the point where I legit understand why the melodic hooks were largely discarded, the most strident rejection of Draw Down the Moon and what it represented to date. And you know what, man, I really wish it connected more strongly, more consistently even, because part of the genius of Near My God was, despite how immense and crushing it felt, there were those hooks, almost in spite of itself. It gave an entry point into that nightmare where the self-titled album just throws up walls of howling cacophony and feedback, and then dares you to be sucked into the morass of depression and doubt, feeling all the more blunt and exhausting with fewer melodic threads to hold on to. Now, Greyhound is the best example of this on a single song where it actually works, and Barking has one of the few great hooks on the album, but by the final third, the ear fatigue was just getting to me in the soup of jarring synths and the fuzz dumped over the blocky percussion, programmed or otherwise, with every single tone elongated thanks to the reverb, which became its most intolerable incredible on cuts like Cleaning and Dead Cat. Hell, one of the reasons I actually think the album kind of sticks the landing on the final 2 songs is that you can step out of the storm. The reverb is tuned back. The chords are still jagged and uncomfortable, intentionally so, but you can at least breathe. And you know, the falsetto vocals, okay, I understand the purpose of sounding that shrill, that broken, but at more than a few points I found myself wondering who is hitting that poor animal with a sledgehammer to produce that sound. I guess well, that's what they mean by foxing. And even as someone who likes Screamo, more vocal modulation, especially in the back half, really could have helped this album feel less monochromatic and the alien maelstrom on display. And I'll be very honest, it took a lot of listens for me to get close to liking this at all. Until I got what it was doing, I did not care for it. As it is right now, you know, it might keep growing on me, and I can't deny that Foxing effectively succeeded in what they set out to do thematically, but not in a way that feels viscerally raw or cathartic in the way that the best emo for me does. And that's kind of bizarre given how blunt the lyricism is. Maybe it's the production approach, maybe it's fewer hooks, and the feeling that it was intentional as in giving the finger to the audience that wants those hooks. Maybe it's how, despite evoking the parallel to Near My God, this album feels just as immense, but there's less filling inside it. Or maybe it's just this lingering feeling of sour, dejected petulance that's really hard to sustain for nearly an hour. And while I do think it's really good, I'm sorry it's just not sticking compared to their best. It is worth a listen. I get why it's getting rave reviews in this scene. I don't know, folks. I really want to like this a lot more. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. Yes, I know a lot of folks were really expecting me to be really hot on this, and I wanted to be, folks. I really did. It just, the tones were not working. It bounced off me in a really tough way. I'm surprised I came around to this as much as I did. Beyond that, though, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if y'all want to help support the channel, well, I'd normally point you towards my Patreon if you want to get access to my schedule, my Discord server, but some of those options are available alongside YouTube memberships, which I've recently activated for this channel, and will likely come most in handy for my new bandwidth streams, which are going to be weekly on Thursday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope to see y'all there. I launched my very first one this past week, and it was a ton of fun. Looking forward to do more of them. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.